Fundamentally in life, there are losers, aka weenies, and there are also winners. And we're gonna present to you a scale, the weenie to winner scale, and you gotta identify exactly which archetype you fall into. And it's gonna be very, very clear by the time this is over what archetype you fall into. There are three different types of weenies, aka losers, and there are three different types of winners. So which one are you? Let's find out. So the first rank of loser is what we're going to call the derping doofus. And what is a derping doofus? Derping doofus is the first rank, and this is an individual who's in apathy, who is hopeless, who is fundamentally at the effect of their life and not at the cause of their life, floating around like a leaf in the wind, leeching off of everybody. They have victim mentality. So fundamentally, they believe that their life is externally controlled by others. They don't have a sense of direction. They don't know what they want. They don't have any aggressive energy moving forward towards goals or vision. And what this means is that there's a deep-rooted lethargy. Oftentimes, people who are very lethargic have incredible levels of distraction in their life. And a lot of these distractions include drugs, alcohol, bad media, social media, television, and gossip. So not only that, their false belief that their life is externally controlled means that they often have a victim mentality. These distractions, coupled with that victim mentality, often leads to low brain power, aka being brain dead. And when you're brain dead, you don't have a lot of energy. How are you going to focus? How are you going to break the matrix? How are you going to accomplish anything? How are you even going to get a low-wage job? If you're an individual like this, you don't even have the focus to get a low-wage job, then oftentimes you become like a mosquito. That is the animal that the derping doofus represents. Like a mosquito, because you're leeching off of everybody else, leeching off of your rich parents, leeching off of friends, fools, and family, leeching off of the government, and then that very government which is giving you the handout, you complain about that same government.
Stupid. It ain't hard to do.
So it's one of those things where it's a very much a taker energy and not a productive energy. It's always about me, and it's not about output of value. Apathetic, derping doofuses are the parasites of society. Because they're relying on those external circumstances and they have that distraction, their brain is pulled around in a million directions, and it makes it very, very difficult to channel the will to leave that. And these individuals are scary because they're the ones who are most susceptible to groupthink. You know, it's always the derpiest people that can fall victim to the most evil agendas. So when you're in that deep of a brain fog because of the external circumstances you falsely believe are influencing you, and because you are distracted, because you're apathetic, because you're lethargic, when you have that level of brain fog, the biggest thing that happens is you lack self-awareness. And when you lack self-awareness, you can't diagnose that you have a problem. And then because you can't diagnose you have a problem, you can't go fix it. So it's the epitome of what a downward spiral is. I want to describe this type of archetype of person in more detail, but that would violate YouTube's terms and policies, so we're not going to do that. That's a different video for a different day, aka Rumble. So next is the minimum wage weenies. And the minimum wage weenie, these are the burger flippers of society. These are the golden handcuffed middle class rat racers of societies. These are the guys who are really stuck in the mud. And with these individuals, they have a lot of excuses for why they are where they are. They flip their burger and they say, you know what, I'm doing an honest day's work. This is honest work. This is honest blue collar work. And at the end of the day, they have more rationalizations. Another day, another dollar. My job is hard. I put food on the table, but coping and thriving are two different paradigms completely. And it's usually a coping paradigm because they are working a soul-sucking job that they hate. They don't enjoy this job. They don't enjoy it at all. They don't enjoy it one bit. They are rationalizing their existence within this job. They are rationalizing their life within this job. And their only constellation prize is they get what they get excited about is at 5 p.m. when the clock, when the clock strikes 5 and they get to go home, they get excited to watch that TV show. They get excited to smoke a J and drink a cold beer and watch a TV show. They get excited to, play frisbee with their friends on a Saturday. So to give the minimum wage weenie a little bit of credit, at least they are not complete victims. They're not leeching off the government. They are not apathetic in the sense that they actually are getting up and going to work and not a complete leech. They're not a complete leaf in the wind. They're not completely lethargic. But much like the derping doofus, they have a lot of the same distractions. They all still do drugs. Not all of them, but many of them still do drugs, distract themselves with bad food, with gossip, with social media, and with television. They have no outside of work skills, outside of picking their nose or whatever it is that they do. And this keeps them in a perpetual Groundhog's Day. It's this, every day is the same skill, the same minimum wage job, the same day over and over and over again. And life just begins to blur together in this Groundhog's Day. And they also reinforce that paradigm because they're hanging out with other people who are stuck in the mud, also living in their own version of the Groundhog's Day. So minimum wage weenies and those stuck in the rat race have false beliefs and terrible paradigms when it comes to how money works and when it comes to money in general, wealth. And a lot of this happens because they are finding a coping mechanism for why they are where they are. They need a reason. They have inverse snobbery to where they actually snob the rich people for being rich. And it's really just a coping mechanism of their brain to rationalize why they are stuck in the mud. And they are no different than a donkey. If they have to represent an animal, it's a donkey. It's a work animal, a pack animal that works really, really, really hard, but at the end of the day, it's just an ass. So the next level of loser or level of weenie is what we're going to call the bootleg businessman. And the bootleg businessman feels like they're getting ahead by watching every bit of self-help content, every book, every Instagram post, every motivational slogan, every podcast, every Joe Rogan podcast, whatever. They feel like they're getting ahead when in reality they're not. And they can talk the grind very well. They can speak, they can talk about success elegantly, poetically. They can talk about the grind. They can talk about business. They can talk about business tactics. They can parrot different motivational slogans, as I said before. But at the end of the day, it's all talk, no results. All talk, no money. Go look at their bank account. The difference between a bootleg businessman, aka a self-help heroin junkie, and an individual who's actually on the path, actually achieving mastery, actually started a business, that difference is monumental. And if you hold the businessman up to the light, they look great. You hold the bootleg businessman up to the light, they are clear holes in their game because they haven't walked their talk. Put a businessman next to a bootleg businessman. Put a businessman next to a self-help junkie. The self-help junkie will get exposed. They are bootleg. A lot of them are caught up in a cycle, a vicious cycle of chasing more and more dopamine. They feel like watching the next video is getting them ahead. When it's just producing a dopamine spike, they have a fantasy of what they could be in life, wishful thinking of what they could be in life, and that motivational video is a coping strategy which gives them feel-good affirmations. It whispers sweet nothings into their ear. It makes them feel like everything's gonna be okay, when in fact it's not. Many of the bootleg businessmen also will rationalize that the pyramid scheme that they're a part of is business, when in fact it's not. Amway isn't business. A lot of these pyramid schemes aren't your own business. You're just caught up in a cycle of being in that pyramid scheme. Bootleg businessmen and self-help junkies are the ultimate productive procrastinators. They get all this information, they never take an action on any of it. They completely live in wishful thinking. They live in a fantasy world. They live in a fairy tale reality that they have constructed for themselves. They feel like they're at the top of the pyramid. They feel like a master. They feel like someone who's on their grind. But all you do is watch content. Watching content is not being on your grind. Watching content is not being a master of your craft. Mastering your craft is mastering your craft. Mastering your craft is taking action on the information. let's get the bootleg businessman a little bit of credit. You know, a lot of them are trying, you know, to get into entrepreneurship. A lot of them are trying to get a better position in life than a minimum wage job or to escape the rat race. And that's good. They're getting new information, which is helping them through those paradigms. And a lot of them also adopt good habits. A lot of them read. A lot of them meditate, whatever. A lot of them work out. So if that's the case, those are all good habits. But meditation is not mastering your craft unless you're going to be a monk. Reading is not mastering your craft unless you're going to be a librarian. Working out is not mastering your craft unless you're going to be an athlete. So those are good success habits that a lot of successful people have. They mimic those successful habits, but they're not actually getting down to the raw nitty-gritty of what it's going to take to be world-class at their craft. They're the animal equivalent of a parrot. If a successful person was in the same room as a parrot talking about success, the parrot can mimic it perfectly. So the bootleg businessman can mimic very, very well. They're just a domesticated intellectual. So we went over the levels of losers. Let's start to go over the levels of winners, and there's 3 different levels. The first one we're going to talk about is what we're going to call the beginner luck ducks, aka it means you're a novice. And when you're a novice, this means that you haven't put in your 10,000 hours yet, but you've done some preliminary work. You've experimented with a bunch of different passions. You've locked in on one passion that you want to go all the way with and be world class at. You haven't put in your 10,000 hours, but you've also accepted that it's going to take 10,000 hours. You have no fairy tale in your mind of what it's going to actually take to be world class. And maybe you started the process of investing into yourselves. Maybe you're getting some mentors here. Maybe you're still you're struggling with some of your vices and distractions, but you're doing your absolute best to kind of stuff those down and get rid of them and cut loose from as many of those distractions as possible. But the downside of being a beginner luck duck is that you're still a duck. AKA, you're quacking more than you're flying, which means you're still a little bit more talk than action, which is fine to a certain degree because you might need to be that way a little bit in the beginning, AKA the fake it till you make it type mentality. Maybe you need to walk in a certain way, talk in a certain way, dress in a certain way before you actually are that successful person, and that's fine because you're trying to pump a halo effect onto yourself because you're new, and what you lack in credibility, you need to make up for in presentation. That being said, the beginner luck ducks is still the first level of success. It just means you're a novice, you're on the right path. You haven't really taken as much action as you need to, so you're still gonna need to course correct based on the actions that you're taking. You're still gonna get new information. This will change your strategy up. Because you're a novice, you're still new, the best thing you can do here is identify what those key fundamentals are of your work, what is gonna build a strong foundation, and begin to just put in your 10,000 hours. Wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off, and start that process now. So the next level of winner is what we're gonna call the grinding Grinch. And this is where you're in that hustler's kind of mindset where you're putting in your 10,000 hours, wax on and wax off on your work, ingraining in those fundamentals. And what's good about this is the real meat and potatoes of mastery. This is where you're making big, big leaps forward. And you're not wasting time with information that doesn't really apply to your craft. You're not wasting any more time, you're just getting down to it. And this is a very positive thing. You've looked at your work from a more macro lens and said, I need this skill set, this skill set, this skill set, this big win, this big benchmark that I need to hit, this big win that I need to hit, and you're making it happen. The downside of this mindset is that you can get yourself into, you become like a hamster on a hamster wheel, and you're just spinning and spinning and spinning, and sometimes you're spinning nowhere. And this happens because you can get into a hustle hard, not hustle smart type of mentality. So if you're working 16 hours a day, 20 hours a day, that's great. But it's not just about that, right? It's about how proficient you are at your work, how efficient you are at your work, how deeply you can work. And that matters more than just putting in more volume on work a lot of times. Now, The volume is still extremely, extremely important. It's an extremely important step. And you might need to work more volume, but you haven't really audited, do I need more active recovery? How can I work smarter and not harder? How can I engage with more deep work and not shallow work? And that's extremely, extremely important to audit, because at the end of the day, it's about the results that you're getting. It's not about how many hours you're working. So the big shift in this mindset is to begin to think about how you can work smarter, more efficiently, more effectively, more deeply, with more focus, with more energy. How can you begin to shift into that headspace and not in a hustler, frenetic, chaotic headspace where you think you're moving forward, but you're not actually. You're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. So that's what happens with the grinding Grinch. 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. But the next level, which is when you actually become a master, is where you're taking 2 steps forward and it's actually 2 steps forward. And you might take 2 steps forward and you actually gain 3 steps forward. And we'll talk about that next. So the 6th and final level is what we're gonna call mastery. And we call you a mastery moose. Why a moose? Because we were just in Montana and moose don't hang out in groups. Moose are alone. Moose are alone, they stand out. They're different than the pack.
Watch out, get back, quick.
They don't need to belong to a pack. So what happens is when you gain mastery, you have separated yourself from the pack completely. You are now alone. And they always say it's lonely at the top. And masters are lonely because they are at the top. And the thing about mastery is now that you've ingrained all the fundamentals into yourself. You put in your 10,000 hours. You know your craft up, top, bottom, side to side, every little nook and cranny, every little detail. You know all about it now. You see the depth of your craft. You see you have a depth of knowledge at your work. And what this allows you to do is it allows you to be extremely proficient and efficient at your work. You can get better results, bigger results with far less effort. And this is because you have depth of knowledge, and it's also because you're more in flow. You're gaining energy off of your work, right? This is not because you're not straining and forcing yourself to learn the fundamentals anymore like the grinding Grinch. Things are now becoming effortless. Big results are now coming to you with way less effort than before. This all happens because you mastered your craft, you mastered the necessary skills. Now, there are also many lifestyle benefits of mastery, whether that be being prestige or social benefits or status benefits or monetary benefits. Maybe you make money because you mastered your work and you can charge the top rated, you can charge top pricing because you are the best at what you do. This gives you money. You get lifestyle benefits. Now when you're a master of what you do, people are now pinging off of you because you mastered your work. So they're pinging off of you to see what's cool about what you've done and what's not cool. Meaning that if you have weird quirks about you, as soon as you become a master, as soon as you start winning, your weirdness now becomes cool to the general population. Another thing that begins to happen is you can add a new level of creativity to your work, an artistic inclination. Your artistic inclinations that are unique to your personality begin to come out into your work, and this adds to the larger body of knowledge when it comes to your craft that you mastered. It adds to the larger body of knowledge because you put in your unique insights that you gained on your path to mastery, and you've added your unique personality to mastery. And because you master the fundamentals, you can now take an interdisciplinary approach, studying other people and their crafts, implementing things that you've learned in your experience, and adding that to the fundamentals of what you do, which cascades and it dissolves into the larger body of work. So that's the main benefit of mastery, is that you master your mind in a certain way, you gain creative insight, you gain flow state, you feel very powerful, you have large amount of insight, you see the interconnectedness between your work and any other body of work around you. You can look at this building and appreciate the building in a different way based on the foundation of the building, based on the bricks that were put in the building. You see the details of the building differently than the average derping doofus sees the building. Why? Because you see the depth of what was put into that building, because you're drawing parallels from what someone else did to what it is that you did. And that is a very, very, very heightened state of awareness. And that is a very, very powerful place to be coming from. So that's what I'll leave you guys off with. I'll see you guys in the next video. Those are the 6 levels. We have the 3 levels of losers, 3 levels of winners. Ask yourself, What level am I at? What level am I trying to get to, which is mastery, obviously. That is the height of power. And how am I going to get there? And you can identify which archetype you stand in based on the traits that I gave in each section. So I'll see you guys in the next video.